My only issue with buybacks is the only function they serve is like pumponomics. When Trump launched his token, there was a bug in our system. The network was kind of like bogged down. It was bad that we were down, but it was kind of bullish that we were down and the network wasn't working. But I do think there are some things that need to be fixed. I think the end state is somewhere users have transaction privacy. I would love to just give people money and retire people like we did.
I want to start at a very high level. Most people are probably intimately familiar with Jito, but there might still be some people out there who are, newcomers to the Solana ecosystem, and they want to find out what the leaders in the space are thinking, what they're doing, what excites them. So how would you explain what Jito is in 30 seconds to someone who maybe doesn't know?
So what we do is we write high performance software for traders on Solana. And anyone who really wants to land a transaction on Solana. And then we also contribute to the Jito Solana stake pool, which liquid staking is where you stake some SOL rather than locking it up and not having access to that liquidity. You get back a liquid staking token, and then you can use that token in DeFi as collateral.
So it gives you more flexibility with your assets, essentially, on chain. If somebody was to say to you, then what's the main problem that you're solving for people in crypto? How would you address that?
Initially, it was a different problem that we thought we were solving. We were just trying to basically filter out spam on Solana. But then, as we realized that the stock Solana scheduler wasn't very good at the time, so the problem became just land a transaction for users. It was just really hard to land a transaction on Solana for highly contentious accounts or tokens, if you will. And now that the scheduler is getting better, that problem's kind of going away a little bit. But really just trying to make the user experience on Solana smooth for users.
Do you reckon you succeeded at that?
If you use Jito, yeah, the user experience seems to be better. The Solana scheduler has gotten a lot better too. The engineers have worked hard on it. So the latest release 2.2, the scheduler is a lot better. So what that actually translates to is you as a user send a transaction, you can rely on that transaction to land fast.
You we were talking earlier, you mentioned MEV excites you. At a very high level, why does it excite you more than some of the more simpler DeFi options that people have, like staking? Why is it more exciting to you?
I just I like tinkering at the lowest level. So when I learned about MEV 3 or 4 years ago, it was just interesting to me that there's this cabal of people that can read the chain or read blocks and have a little more sophistication than other engineers or users on the chain, and are able to use that to their advantage for financial gain. So I thought that was super cool. And it's also gotten me to really just learn how the internet works. So the internet's just magic to most people, but then as you start to get into high performance infrastructure, oh, electricity has to travel through wires under the ocean. How do you get that to move faster? And I don't even know how the internet works. Once you understand how it works, you're how does any of this work? An example is there's these ships out in the Indian Ocean, and they, I think intentionally, let their anchors just drag across the ocean so they could cut the sea cables. And then you get random outages in Tokyo, and it's also fragile.
That's intentional, you reckon?
Yeah, I think so.
What's the blockchain equivalent of that then? Trump launching a Solana meme coin and then strains the network, is that the equivalent?
Yeah, something I mean, what was that? I won't name the project. They're my friends, but they launched something where it was computing a hash on chain, where it was basically a Bitcoin hash algorithm on chain, and it just filled blocks up and you couldn't land transactions.
And you can do that in a sort of malicious way, I guess, to mess with other projects and really strain the network, the infrastructure.
Yeah, you could do things like write lock other projects' accounts and try to basically, if you have the means to, you could just basically send a bunch of transactions, high priority fees, write lock accounts, and block their transactions from ever landing, or land less.
Interesting. So that's what gets you out of bed when you think about blockchain and technology and moving money around. It's just, how do things work and how do we improve them?
Yeah, there's all this game theory, economic incentives, engineering problems, all at this intersection. So that stuff's exciting.
Well, you guys are for people that are intimately familiar with the Solana ecosystem, you guys have been there. One of the first options that pop up if you ask anyone in Solana, oh, I'm coming from the Ethereum ecosystem, let's say I want to stake on Solana, or which projects are safe on Solana, people very frequently say, hey, Jito's a project that you should go and check out. Why do you think that is? What gives people trust in Jito?
I mean, it took a while to build up goodwill. Getting validators to adopt our client, it took a bit. Once we hit some escape velocity around 60% of network adoption, then it's much easier to get to where we are now, which is around 90%. Why do people trust this? I think just from the top, me and my co-founder were good people, and the vibes kind of just reciprocate down to the engineers, and We're just trying to do good for the network and build something that actually makes people money.
And it's working so far, you reckon?
Yeah, we made $1 billion for validators in the last year.
Let's talk about that. You made $1 billion for validators in the last 12 months. And how much of that is impacted by these sort of anomalous events like Trump launching a meme coin, like Melania launching a meme coin, which, for better or worse, strained the network infrastructure, and it gave people a reason to sort of figure out how things work, figure out why things might not work, and fix it, improve the network for, allowing onboarding to continue the way it is. But how much of that revenue is tied to these sort of anomalous events?
Those long tail events, you definitely see crazy spikes in MEV and tips. So funny story, when Trump launched his token, there was a bug in our system in the block engine where we weren't processing transactions fast enough. Something with one of the queues just wasn't like, we weren't properly reading off the queue. Essentially, Jito was down and the network, like you're saying, was kind of like bogged down. Nobody could land a transaction. So it was bad that we were down, but it was kind of bullish that we were down and the network wasn't working. It's like, oh, okay, so this thing actually does do some good for the network. I think the largest tip was around $300,000 or something at the time, one trade. It was a whiff trade, I believe, which is crazy. Yeah, you see those.
And that's just one whale trying to land a transaction.
Yeah, or there's a big ARB and, they're going to make $1 million. So they're going to tip, I don't know, $300,000, $400,000 to get it.
So, I mean, maybe this is a bit of a cheeky question, but is that part of the reason why MEV excites you the most? Is because you can find these sort of niche ARB opportunities and really say to people, like, hey, you have a problem. I have the infrastructure to solve that problem. Name your price.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like, there's so much game theory involved. There's so much adversity involved. And it's like a jungle. I think it's cool.
Absolutely. Okay, so how do you see the MEV landscape evolving then? Let's say 12 months. We can't really think more than 24 months ahead because we don't know if Trump's going to do some wild stuff and throw some curveballs out there. But what's going to happen in the next 12 months?
We've been pretty positive about how things are so far, but I do think there are some things that need to be fixed. Users are not always getting the best pricing, or they're getting exploited by malicious trader types. So how do we fix that? We're working on something in the background. I can't leak too much today, but I will say this. I think the end state is somewhere where users have transaction privacy. So today, a user sends a transaction. That is anyone in the middle, like an RPC or an order flow aggregator, validator. They all see the transaction contents. They can leak that to someone, and then user could get sandwiched. In the new world, where you have transaction privacy, no one can leak it. If they leak it, nobody can decrypt it.
Interesting. I know projects like Archeum are working a lot on this type of encryption. Is that the type of encryption that we're looking for then, where projects, individuals, organizations get to decide what type of privacy and what level of privacy they have for their transactions?
I'll say this. It's hardware level encryption, and you're guaranteed for your transaction to be uninspectable.
Entirely. Okay. Yeah. What does that mean for meme coin traders versus institutions then?
It's good for everybody. As a meme coin trader, it means if you set a 30% slippage price, you won't necessarily get slipped to 30% just because someone decided to slip you or front run you. And for institutions, even better, because those guys trade in size. If you're trading 7 figures and you get slipped, if you get slipped for 3% versus 1%, that's a big difference. So it's good for everybody.
Good for everybody. And what type of partnerships can we look out for in the next 12 months? What type of announcements are you going to make? Is it mainly on the hardware side? Are you looking to expand, with Web2 partners? What's in the pipeline?
Yeah, so something related to what I was just talking about. And then I don't want to get hanged by my chief legal officer. So
it's rough. It's rough out there with compliance lately, isn't it?
Yeah, she already gets on me enough.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I would say keep your eyes open. We're doing a lot of work behind the scenes on the institutional front. This is public already, but my co-founder was in DC. So we're talking to a lot of people on that front. So keep your eyes open for that. And then also this new product I'm alluding to, I think you'll hear something about it soon.
Making moves on the institutional front?
Yep.
You live in the US, right?
Yep.
I want to ask you a question about that. The new administration and this sort of change of SEC attitude towards innovative companies, let's say, seems to be sort of sparking this revival of innovation in the US. The US is a hub for innovation again.
Yep.
Do you see large projects in the next 12 months relocating or moving over to the US? Do you think that's going to happen?
I hope so. I mean, the previous administration basically drove billions of dollars of capital and intellectual capital out of the country, all offshore. It'd be nice to see people come back. New founders are now more excited about just building in the US, finding a good state and finding a beautiful state and hunkering down and building in the US.
So you expect to see more of that happening.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the US has a lot of pros. It's got some cons, maybe, on some higher taxes and whatnot. But overall, if the president is launching a meme coin after his own name, and now he's got like a leaderboard, I think, on his website, right?
Yeah, they invited the top 220 holders, I think, to some event, which is, I mean, it's dodgy in some sense, if I'm honest.
It's a little cringe, but
Yeah.
it's still, it's like net.
Bullish for Solana, you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's net positive for entire crypto ecosystem.
Interesting. What about when his wife launches one and then everything goes to
It's
shit?
terrible. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. If I was his like press manager or whatever, I would not think it's a good idea. But I think it's a strong signal nonetheless in the positive side.
For us as an industry, I would be inclined to agree with you. I want to ask you very quickly about buybacks as well. It's part of the mechanism you guys have created to essentially give back some of the value that's created to the community. It seems to be very welcome. So talk to me about buybacks. What's your strategy been so far? Why do you think it's been successful? And what's next?
Yeah, so there was a proposal, I believe, a Jito proposal to implement buybacks. I mean, there's two camps. I think buybacks my only issue with buybacks is the only function they serve is like pumponomics. There's like no other. It's also a signal that the team is not well versed in reinvesting the profits into something else, into other product lines or other revenue streams. I do think it's worth like punting and trying for a couple months. Like you should try things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the camp I'm in. Try it. Maybe it works. It's not the best solution.
Do you have an example of buybacks that have absolutely worked in crypto?
I think Radium worked. And I think MakerDAO worked for a while.
Okay, alpha time. Everyone's wondering.
Yeah.
Airdrops. I'm sure you have polarizing opinions on airdrops as well, just like buybacks. Some people think they're great. Some people think it's a decent bootstrapping mechanism for attention and get a bit of momentum. But then at the end of the day, sort of fall shorts and people sort of take their capital and they go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Are you going to do another one?
The first one was very successful. Kind of kicked off like the DeFi run, right? I would love to do another one. I would love to just give people money and retire people like we did. I heard all sorts of beautiful stories. There's a guy in Vietnam. He worked at like a hot dog stand or whatever. And he got from the Jito Airdrop, he was able to just like retire pretty much for at least 5 years, 6 years.
That's beautiful.
So, I'm all about that. I like doing that.
Sounds like a yes.
I wouldn't.
It sounds like a soft yes.
I don't know.
Rough timeline for considering an airdrop. This cycle?
What's a cycle too?
That's an interesting.
Are we in a cycle or is it all just one giant cycle?
Right. I'm asking the questions here. I should ask you.
Yeah.
4-year cycles are maybe a thing of the past. Seems to be the prevailing consensus at the moment. Decoupling from macro seems to be the consensus. Do you sort of agree with that?
I think macro is always going to be a factor in any capital market, but I do think like cycles get sort of like shorter, and then kind of like the stock market where it's just like up only, and then the Dow goes down 5%, everybody panics. I think that's kind of what our cycles are going to start looking like.
Interesting. Okay, thinking about the next 12 months then, not even cycles, but just immediate 12 months. Let's say you guys are considering doing something amazing and generous, like an airdrop, but we don't know about that yet. You've spoken about MEV getting you excited and you're breaking things, figuring out how things work. What else gets you excited in the Solana ecosystem? Maybe zooming out from Jito for a second. What's happening with other projects, partnerships with, you mentioned DC earlier. What really gets you excited and bullish that we are going to eventually see another up-only style period?
Yeah, I mean, I love projects like 00, Fire Dancer. These are super technical, cool projects. I like projects that are helping users get better pricing with like novel primitives, like more intent-based trading style projects. Like DFlow is a good example of that. Mm-hmm. And then I also like projects that are super boring and they just get you safe yield. Like Lulo is an example of this.
Right.
Like, how do you get your grandma or your mom to use crypto? Well, you just tell them, it's kind of like a bank account. You put some stables in here and you earn 6%. You beat the treasury rate. So I like things like that.
Beyond Lulo, do you have any sort of question marks about yield? I know, so we were talking to Erbil earlier from Huma, and he said, double-digit yield is very attractive to people, and it tends to be the reason why people come to the project. And Marinade offers sometimes up to 10% yield as well in their staking products. We always ask, where is the yield coming from? And Erbil had a very clear response to it. So do you have any question marks about projects that offer high yield and can't really explain where the yield comes from?
Well, what's the famous saying? It's if you don't know where the yield comes from, you are the yield. or yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think Marinade's doing that. I think they're subsidizing with. I think some of these like staking projects subsidize with their validator block rewards. So that's where that comes from. There was a time where I really like projects with 1,000% yield. Those times that's like 2021 in my mind. I like just like safe yield. Like if you can beat the treasury rate, that's good enough for me.
That's really good alpha, I think. Don't be chasing 1,000%.
Do it.
1,000%. It's not going to happen. You're all going to come crashing down. Listen, we're really going to be focusing on what you guys are up to in the next 12 months. Hopefully there's an airdrop. I know a lot of people are eagerly awaiting it. We'll be looking out for some of the announcement that you guys are releasing as well. Anything else you can share with us? Any final thoughts about the Solana ecosystem in the next 12 months?
I mean, feeling the energy at this conference, I was already excited about Solana. I've been excited about Solana, but it's kind of reinvigorating to see everyone in person. And you guys have done a beautiful job here. So thank you guys.
Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Yeah.